The satellite phone crackled at 3:47 a.m., dragging Dr. Elena Voss from a dreamless sleep in her cramped research cabin. She fumbled for the receiver, knocking over a mug of cold coffee that had sat untouched since midnight. "Voss," her voice was hoarse, "we have a situation." It was Marcus Chen, the Forest Service liaison whose calls never brought good news. "Game warden found something near Cascade Peak. You need to see this. Now." "Marcus, it's almost 4 in the—" "Elena." His tone stopped her. In 3 years of working together, he'd never used her first name. "Bring your trauma kit, and bring discretion." 20 minutes later, she was navigating the fire road in her battered jeep, headlights carving tunnels through the Douglas fir darkness. The September air in the North Cascades held the first bite of autumn, fog banking in the valleys like something primordial. Her breath misted in the cab, despite the heater rattling at full blast. The coordinates led to a clearing she'd surveyed twice during the summer wildlife census, a cirque valley at 4,200 feet, ringed by old-growth forest that had never known a chainsaw. 3 vehicles were already there: Marcus's Forest Service truck, the warden's Bronco, and an unmarked sedan that made her stomach clench. Federal. That meant paperwork, protocols, and questions she probably couldn't answer. Marcus met her at the tree line, his usually composed face drawn tight. He was a compact man in his 50s, half Chinese, half Lummi Nation, with the kind of outdoors competence that came from generations of knowing these mountains. Right now, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Before you go in," he said quietly, "I need your word. Nothing gets reported through normal channels until we understand what this is. Marcus, if there's an endangered species, it's not just look, then we'll talk." He led her down a game trail, flashlight beams crossing and recrossing in the pre-dawn murk. The warden, a young woman named Singh, stood outside a natural shelter formed by a fallen cedar. She looked pale, gripping her rifle with white knuckles. "It's still alive," Singh whispered. "I thought it was dead." Then it looked at me. Elena ducked under the cedar's massive root ball. Her headlamp illuminated the hollow space beyond, and her breath stopped. The figure was massive, easily 7.5 feet if it could stand. It lay on its side, breathing shallowly, one arm cradled against its torso. The body was covered in dark auburn hair, matted now with blood and dirt. The face was wrong. Not human, but not animal either. The brow ridge was pronounced, the jaw prognathic, but the eyes, half closed, rolling with fever, held something unmistakable. Recognition, awareness, intelligence. Elena's medical training overrode her shock. She dropped to her knees, hands already reaching for vitals. The skin beneath the hair was hot, feverish, pulse rapid and thready at the wrist, or what passed for a wrist, the hand enormous, the fingers thick but showing precise opposition. She found a wound on the left flank, a deep puncture that smelled of infection. "What happened?" she asked, probing gently around the injury. "Territorial dispute, maybe," Marcus said from the entrance, keeping his distance. "We found another one dead, half a mile east, bigger, male, broken neck. This one's wounds suggest a fight." Elena's mind raced through impossibilities. The anatomy was wrong for any known great ape. The shoulder structure, the hip angle, the foot. She could see it now, elongated but showing a longitudinal arch. This was a biped, a habitual biped. She pressed a stethoscope to the chest. The heart hammered irregularly, lungs crackling with fluid. Pneumonia, probably, secondary to the wound. Without antibiotics, this individual would die within days. "We need to move it," Elena said. "Get it somewhere I can work." "It's not an it," Marcus said softly. "Look at the hands." Elena looked. The palms were calloused, but not randomly. The pattern suggested tool use, gripping, manipulation. Between the fingers she noticed a dark residue. She scraped a sample onto a slide. Plant matter, carefully applied. A poultice. This individual had tried to treat its own wounds. "Jesus," she breathed. "There's more." Marcus crouched beside her, pointing to a leather cord around the thick neck. Strung on it were carved wooden beads, each incised with geometric patterns, deliberate, artistic, cultural. "This is a person," Elena said, the words feeling both absurd and undeniable. "This is a people, which is why we can't report this through normal channels," came a new voice. The federal agent stepped into the shelter, a sharp-faced woman in her 40s, FBI badge clipped to her belt. "Dr. Voss, I'm Agent Reeves, Office of Scientific Intelligence. We've been tracking rumors in this region for 8 months. You're about to become part of a very small, very quiet team." Elena's instincts prickled. "I'm a wildlife biologist, not—" "You're also a trained paramedic with field surgical experience, per your service record. And right now, you're the only person within 200 miles with the clearance and competence to handle this." Reeves knelt, studying the patient with clinical detachment. "We stabilize, we transport to the Timber Creek facility, and we figure out what the hell we're dealing with. Questions later." Agreed. Elena looked at the figure, the person, struggling for breath in the dirt. The ethical calculus was dizzying. Report this, and the being would become a specimen, a geopolitical asset, a commodity. Keep silent, and she was complicit in, what, kidnapping? Protective custody of an unknown hominid species? The patient's eyes opened fully for a moment, amber-brown and luminous in the flashlight beam. They fixed on Elena with startling clarity. The expression was unmistakable, fear, and something else, pleading. "Agreed," Elena said, "but I'm in charge of medical decisions, no interference." "Done." Reeves stood. "Chen Sing, get the tarp stretcher from my vehicle. We move in 10. The Timber Creek Research Station was a relic of Cold War forestry programs, a concrete bunker disguised as a fire lookout maintenance depot. The upper floor held radio equipment and weather monitors. The basement was a different world, clean room protocols, medical-grade air filtration, and a fully equipped field hospital that could handle anything from bear attacks to hazmat exposure. They settled the patient. Elena was already thinking of them as a patient, not a specimen, onto a reinforced exam table in the isolation suite. The figure's massive frame barely fit, one arm dangling off the edge. Elena started an IV with difficulty. The veins were deep, the skin tough. She pushed fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics, and a mild sedative to ease the labored breathing. Then the work began. For 8 hours, Elena catalogued the impossible. She drew blood, noting its vivid red color. The cells slightly larger than human erythrocytes, but functionally identical. She swabbed the mouth, finding dentition that blended human and archaic hominin traits. Thick enamel, bunodont molars built for grinding plant matter. She X-rayed the limbs, staring at bones that were dense, robust, but unmistakably hominid. The skull films made her hands shake. The brain case was large, perhaps 1/600 cubic centimeters. Within human range, within Neanderthal range. The karyotype analysis would take days, but she ran a rapid genetic panel on a cheek swab. When the results printed, she sat down hard on a stool. "You okay?" Marcus had been hovering near the door, maintaining the chain of custody Reeves had mandated. "The DNA, Marcus, there's human DNA in here, not contamination, integrated. This individual shares approximately 98.7% genetic similarity with Homo sapiens. That's closer than the chimpanzee, closer than Denisovans were to modern humans. Meaning this is our cousin, a sister species that diverged from our lineage maybe 500,000 years ago, maybe less. And they've been here, in these mountains, the whole time." She looked through the observation window. The patient was resting more easily now, the antibiotics beginning to work. In sleep, the face looked almost peaceful. The heavy brow ridge softened, the broad nose flaring gently with each breath. There was a scar on the left cheek, old and white against the darker skin. A life lived. "We can't let anyone know," Marcus said. "You understand that, right? The moment this gets out, these mountains will be crawling with researchers, media, hunters, every kind of vulture. Their whole world ends." "I know." Elena pressed her forehead against the cool glass. But keeping them secret, that's not a decision we get to make alone. What if they're endangered? What if there are only a few dozen left? We could be watching an extinction in real time. Or we could be the extinction, Marcus countered. The Lummi elders have stories about the forest people. They were here before us, and the stories say we drove them up into the high country, killed them when they came too close to the salmon streams. What do you think happens if the world finds out? These beings have survived by being invisible. We take that away, we kill them. Elena wanted to argue, but the logic was crushing. She'd seen what happened when rare species were discovered. The rush of scientific egos, the exploitation, the collapse of fragile populations under the pressure of human attention. So what do? She asked. We heal this one. We learn what we can, and we bury the rest. Marcus's jaw was set. It's not fair, but it's the only way they survive. Elena returned to the examination, pushing down the ethical vertigo. She needed data. She needed to understand what she was treating. The wound itself was a revelation. The puncture had been caused by something sharp, a broken branch maybe, or an antler during the fight Marcus described. But what fascinated Elena was the treatment. The poultice she'd found was a complex mixture, arnica for inflammation, yarrow for clotting, something else she couldn't immediately identify, a moss or lichen with a sharp medicinal smell. She scraped samples, preparing slides for the microscope. The lab equipment here was better than her university setup, another reminder that Reeves's office had planned for this kind of discovery. How many other impossible things were filed away in federal basements? Under magnification, the unknown component revealed itself. It was a fungus, a delicate mycelium woven through the plant matrix. Elena consulted her field guides, cross-referencing morphology and habitat. Nothing matched. She ran it through the genetics database. No hits. A novel species. She was still staring at the images when the patient woke. The sound was low, a rumbling vocalization that vibrated through the floor. Elena spun from the microscope to see the patient sitting upright, one hand gripping the IV stand, eyes wide and darting. Hey, it's okay. Elena raised her hands, keeping her voice soft. You're safe. You're hurt, but you're safe. The patient's gaze fixed on her. For a long moment neither moved. Then slowly, the patient released the IV stand and touched the wound dressing on its flank. The thick fingers probed gently, testing, assessing. You understand, Elena whispered. You know I helped you. The patient's eyes met hers again. This close, Elena could see the striations in the irises, the slight epicanthic fold, the way the pupils contracted in the bright medical lights. This was a face shaped by emotions, by thought, by culture. Slowly, the patient raised one hand, palm out, fingers spread, a gesture, universal, non-threatening. Elena mirrored it, heart pounding. My name is Elena. I'm a doctor. I want to help. And the patient tilted its head, considering. Then it pointed to itself and made a sound, a breathy, complex phoneme that Elena's vocal cords couldn't possibly replicate. She tried anyway, butchering it. The patient's lips pulled back, not a snarl, Elena realized with a shock, but a smile, gentle, amused. Can I take more samples? Elena gestured to the blood draw kit, then to the patient's arm. To understand, to help more. The patient watched her hands, then its own arm. After a pause, it extended the limb. Permission. Elena worked quickly, narrating each step. She didn't know if the patient understood English, but the tone seemed to matter. She drew blood, swabbed for epithelial cells, plucked a hair for follicle DNA. The patient endured it all with stoic calm, flinching only when Elena approached with the ophthalmoscope. Just looking at your eyes, Elena soothed. I need to check for signs of fever, infection. She peered through the scope and gasped. The retinal structure was human normal, but the vessels showed something odd, a slight fluorescence, barely perceptible. She adjusted the wavelength, switching to her UV attachment. The blood vessels lit up, glowing faintly blue-green. Bioluminescence. What the... Eleanor pulled back, checking her equipment. No malfunction. She looked at the patient, who gazed back placidly. You have bioluminescent compounds in your bloodstream. That's incredible. What are you eating? She thought of the fungal poultice. Could it be symbiotic, a medicinal relationship that had evolved over millennia, fungi providing antibiotic and anti-inflammatory compounds while the host dispersed spores? Elena grabbed her notebook, sketching rapidly. This was beyond her expertise. She needed a mycologist, an ethnobotanist, a pharmacologist, but she couldn't call anyone, couldn't risk exposure. The patient watched her write, eyes tracking the pen movements. Then it reached out, touching the notebook's edge with one finger. Elena froze. The patient tapped the page, then pointed to its own chest. You want to communicate? Elena flipped to a clean page, offering the pen. The patient took it awkwardly, the grip wrong for the thick fingers. But it managed, pressing the tip to paper. It drew a circle, then a tree inside the circle, then small figures around the tree, holding hands. Community, family, home. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You want to go back to your people? The patient pointed to the drawing, then to itself, then to the door. The message was clear. I know, Eleanor said. I know you need to go home, but you're still sick. The infection, if you leave now, you'll die. She didn't know if it understood the words, but the patient seemed to read her expression. It looked at the IV, the monitors, the medical equipment surrounding it. Then it lay back down, resigned, trusting. Elena covered it with a thermal blanket, adjusting the IV drip. 3 days, she said. Give me 3 days to make you strong enough. Then we figure out how to get you home. The patient's eyes closed, but one hand remained open on the blanket, palm up, an offering. A contract. Elena touched it briefly. The skin was warm, rough, alive, and went to find Reeves. The debriefing took place in the station's secure communications room, a windowless box lined with signal-dampening foam. Reeves sat across from Elena, a recorder running between them. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed. Let me be clear, Reeves said. What we discuss here stays here. No publications, no conferences, no late-night calls to colleagues. You've signed the non-disclosure. I don't need to explain the consequences of breaking it. I understand operational security, Elena said tightly, but I need resources. That fungal compound could be medically significant. The bioluminescent properties suggest novel biochemistry. If I can't bring in specialists, you have the database access and equipment here. That's more than most researchers dream of. Reeves's tone softened slightly. Dr. Voss, I'm not the enemy. My job is to protect discoveries that could destabilize society. A living, intelligent hominid species on U.S. soil. That's a constitutional crisis. That's land rights, sovereignty, religious implications. That's every conspiracy theorist vindicated and every government institution questioned. That's also a people with rights. Elena shot back. You can't just classify them. We're not classifying them. We're buying time. Reeves leaned forward. Right now, maybe 100 people worldwide know these beings exist. Anthropologists who've seen the evidence and stayed quiet. Indigenous communities who've kept the secret for generations. A few federal agencies. We're not covering up. We're preventing a catastrophe by keeping a sentient being prisoner, by keeping a critically endangered species from being hunted to extinction in 6 months. Reeves's eyes were hard. You want to save them? Keep them secret. Heal this one, learn what you can about their survival needs, and help us figure out how to protect them without destroying them. That's the mission. Elena wanted to argue, but she thought of the drawing, the circle, the tree, the family. How many were left? 50? 20? Could a species survive on those numbers, or were they already the walking dead, a genetic bottleneck so tight that extinction was inevitable? What about the other one? She asked. The dead one Marcus mentioned. Already documented and buried, Reeves said. Full skeletal analysis, tissue samples in cryo storage. Male, approximately 60 years old based on dental wear. Cause of death was cervical fracture, likely from the younger individual defending itself. We found a territorial boundary marker nearby. Stone cairns, deliberate placement. They have ranges, probably small family groups. And you're just letting me know this now. Need to know, Dr. Voss. You needed to focus on the living patient. Reeves stood. You have 3 days, you said. Make them count. I want a full medical profile, behavioral observations, and any insights into their ethnobotanical practices, that fungus especially. If they've developed novel antimicrobials, that's strategically significant. Strategically, Elena's voice rose. You want to weaponize their medicine. I want to understand it. There's a difference. Reeves moved to the door. Get some rest. You look like hell. Chen will maintain watch. No one enters that room without your clearance. When she was gone, Marcus let out a long breath. Welcome to the secret world, Dr. Voss. This is insane, Elena muttered. We're sitting on the anthropological discovery of the century, and I can't tell anyone. Would you? Marcus challenged. If you could publish, if you could bring in the teams and the media and the whole circus, would you really do that to them? Elena thought of the patient's trusting hand, the drawing of home and family. She thought of what would happen if the world knew. The helicopters, the cameras, the armed hunters claiming self-defense, the researchers trapping and tagging like this was just another wildlife study. No, she admitted, I wouldn't, but that doesn't make it right. Right is keeping them alive, Marcus said. Everything else is luxury. Eleanor returned to the observation room, watching the patient sleep. The monitors showed steady improvement, heart rate normalizing, fever dropping. In 3 days, maybe less, the individual would be strong enough to travel. And then what? Elena pulled out the fungal samples, loading them into the genetic sequencer. If this compound was as unique as she suspected, it could revolutionize medicine. Natural antibiotics were growing scarce as resistance spread. A new class of antimicrobials could save millions of human lives, but it would also spotlight the source. It would make these beings valuable in the worst possible way. She thought of the oath she'd taken. First, do no harm. But harm to whom? The patient in front of her, who deserved the best care she could provide. The hidden population in the mountains, who deserved privacy and survival. Or the millions of human patients who could benefit from this discovery. There was no good answer, only choices, each one a betrayal. Elena opened her notebook, turning to a fresh page. She began writing everything she'd observed, every measurement, every behavioral note. If she was going to be part of this secret, she'd do it right. She'd document it all, hold the knowledge in trust until, if the day came when it could be shared safely. Until then, she was a guardian, a keeper of impossible truths. The patient stirred, eyes opening to find her. Elena raised her hand in that universal gesture. Palm out, fingers spread. Peace, safety, promise. The patient returned it, then pointed to the drawing still visible in Elena's notebook. Home. 3 days, Elena said. I promise. 3 days, and we'll find a way. The patient seemed to understand. It settled back, one hand resting on the healing wound. In the dim light, Elena could just make out the faint blue-green glow beneath the skin, the gift of the fungus, the symbiosis that had kept these beings alive in the shadows. She had 3 days to learn an entire pharmacopoeia, 3 days to understand a relationship between species and medicine that predated human civilization. 3 days to decide what kind of scientist, what kind of person she wanted to be. The recorder kept running, documenting everything. Somewhere in a federal archive, this would become file number something or other, classified and buried. But here now, it was just Elena and a patient who trusted her, and the weight of knowledge that could never be unlearned. She pulled her stool closer to the observation window and began to work. By the second morning, the patient, Eleanor had started thinking of them as Kyle, a soft approximation of the breathy name sound they'd made, could sit upright without assistance. The infection was retreating, the wound edges beginning to granulate healthily. Elena changed the dressing, noting how Kyle watched her hands with intense focus, tracking each step of the procedure. "You're learning," Elena murmured, taping down the fresh gauze. "Seeing how we do it." Kyle reached out, touching the roll of medical tape. Then they picked up a clean gauze pad, examining it between thick fingers. The texture, the weave. When Elena offered the supplies, Kyle mimicked her movements, folding the gauze, pressing it gently over the wound site. The tape application was clumsy, but the concept was there. Tool use, observational learning, cultural transmission. Elena documented everything in her notebook, which had become a constant presence. Kyle showed increasing interest in it, watching Elena sketch and write. On impulse, Elena drew a simple image: a cup, a spoon, a bowl. She pointed to each drawing, then to the real objects on the medical cart. Kyle studied the page. Then they took the pen, still awkward but with more confidence, and added to the drawing. They sketched a plant, roots visible, with leaves shaped like hands. Then they drew a figure eating the plant, with wavy lines radiating from the figure's stomach. "Medicine," Elena breathed. "You're showing me medicine plants." She grabbed her field guides, flipping through illustrations of regional flora. Kyle leaned in, surprisingly close, their breath warm and carrying a scent like pine resin and earth. When Elena stopped on a page showing Devil's Club, Kyle grunted and tapped the image firmly. Then they gestured to their own chest, rubbing it in a circular motion. "Respiratory issues, Devil's Club for breathing problems." Elena knew the plant had traditional uses among Pacific Northwest tribes, anti-inflammatory, immune support. But seeing it confirmed by a being whose people might have used it for tens of thousands of years sent chills down her spine. She turned more pages. Kyle responded to several: cascara for digestive issues, western red cedar for infections, a type of bracket fungus that matched the samples from the original poultice. Each identification came with a gesture, a pantomimed symptom or treatment method. "You're a healer," Elena said slowly. "That's why you knew to treat your wound. You're a medicine keeper." Kyle met her eyes. For a moment, Elena saw something profound there, recognition of being recognized, of expertise acknowledged. Kyle nodded once, deliberate. The realization shifted everything. This wasn't just a chance encounter with an unknown hominid. Kyle was a specialist, someone who held medical knowledge within their community, someone whose loss would be catastrophic to their people. Elena had to get them home, fast. Marcus arrived mid-morning with supplies and news. "Reeves wants preliminary findings by tonight. She's flying in a mycologist from Fort Detrick. Vetted, cleared, the whole 9 yards. They'll be here by 1800 hours. "I thought we were keeping the circle small," Elena said, not looking up from her microscope. She was analyzing the fungal mycelium, which under electron microscopy showed bizarre structures, spiraling hyphae that seemed to produce crystalline compounds in specialized cells. Small is relative. This guy, Dr. Okonkwo, he's the best in bioactive fungi. If anyone can identify what we're looking at, it's him, and he's signed enough NDAs to choke a bear. Fine. Elena adjusted the focus, capturing images. "But Kyle interacts with me only. I don't want them overwhelmed." "Kale?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "It's what I'm calling them, better than the patient or the subject." Elena finally looked up. "They showed me their plant medicines today. Marcus, they have a whole system, a pharmacopoeia developed over, God, we don't even know how long. This isn't primitive survival. This is sophisticated ethnobotany." Marcus approached the observation window. Kyle was sitting cross-legged on the exam table, braiding strips of cloth from a torn sheet. The thick fingers moved with surprising dexterity, creating a complex pattern. When finished, they tied it around one wrist like a bracelet, then started another. "What are they doing?" Marcus asked. "Making something, art maybe, or a mnemonic device? Some cultures use knots and weaving to encode information." Eleanor joined him at the window. "I wish we could talk, really talk. I have so many questions." Maybe you can. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a video. I called a friend on the Lummi Nation Council. She's an elder keeper of traditional stories. I showed her a very carefully framed image of Kale. Just the hand, the beadwork, nothing identifiable. She recognized the carving style. Elena's heart raced. What did she say? She said her grandmother's grandmother spoke of the shy people who lived in the highest forests. They didn't have many words, their throats were shaped differently, but they had signs, hand language. And they traded with the Lummi sometimes, medicine plants that didn't grow in the lower valleys in exchange for dried salmon and obsidian points. When? When was this? Last documented trade? Around 1870. Then the shy people retreated further up into places humans didn't go. The elders say it was because of the settlers, the logging, the noise, the guns. The shy people decided invisibility was survival. Elena felt the weight of history pressing down, 150 years of intentional hiding. And now she'd dragged one of them back into human awareness. Did your friend share any signs? Any way to communicate? Marcus nodded. Basic ones. But Elena, she also said that if the shy people are still out there, still alive, we need to leave them alone. Her words, they chose the wild. We owe them that choice. I know, I do. Eleanor pressed her hand against the glass. But Kyle is here, right now, and I need to understand their needs before we can safely return them. Then let's try. Marcus entered the isolation room, Elena following with her notebook. Kyle looked up from their weaving, alert but not alarmed. They were getting used to Marcus's presence. Marcus positioned himself where Kyle could see clearly, then formed a sign. One hand flat, the other in a fist, tapping twice on the palm. Food. Kyle's eyes widened. They repeated the sign back, then pointed to their mouth and rubbed their stomach. Agreement. Elena nearly dropped her notebook. They understand. They know this language, Marcus continued. He signed water, cupped hands, sleep, hands together under cheek, hurt, pointing to a body part with a grimace. Kale responded to each, sometimes with the same sign, sometimes with variations. A slightly different hand position, an additional gesture. A dialect, Elena realized. The Lummi signs had diverged over 150 years, but the root language remained. Elena fumbled through, trying simple combinations. She pointed to herself, then signed, help, friend. Kyle regarded her for a long moment. Then they signed something Elena didn't recognize. One hand over the heart, the other extended palm up. The expression was solemn. What does that mean? Elena asked Marcus. I don't know. Maybe trust or gratitude? The elder didn't teach me that one. Kyle repeated it more slowly, making sure Elena saw. Then they pointed to the drawings in her notebook, to the medical equipment, to the healing wound on their flank. The meaning became clear. You help me, I trust you, I am grateful. Elena felt her throat tighten. She signed back as best she could, hoping the intent carried through her clumsy hands. Dr. Okonkwo arrived precisely at 1800 hours. A tall Nigerian man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and an air of unflappable calm. Reeves made the introductions in the secured conference room, keeping Kale's existence theoretical until the additional NDAs were signed. So, Okonkwo said, settling into a chair with his coffee, Agent Reeves informs me you've encountered a novel fungal species with potential pharmaceutical applications. She also hinted that the circumstances are irregular. That's one word for it, Elena said. She slid the microscopy images across the table. I need you to tell me what this is and what it does. Okonkwo studied the photos, his expression shifting from polite interest to intense focus. He pulled out a magnifying loupe, examining the crystalline structures. Where did you collect this specimen? From a poultice applied by... Elena glanced at Reeves, who nodded slightly. By an injured individual with extensive ethnobotanical knowledge. The fungus was mixed with arnica and yarrow, applied to a puncture wound that showed no signs of sepsis despite being several days old. The individual being not human, but close. Okonkwo looked up sharply. How close? 98. 7% genetic similarity, a sister species, Homo something. We don't have enough comparative data for a proper classification. The mycologist sat back slowly, processing. To his credit, he didn't question or exclaim. He simply nodded. I see. And this individual has been using this fungus medicinally, presumably for generations. Millennia, possibly. May I see the culture? Okonkwo's voice was steady, professional. Underneath, Elena could see the excitement of a scientist facing the impossible. She led him to the lab, where fungal samples were growing in petri dishes under controlled conditions. The mycelium had spread rapidly, forming delicate white networks that, under UV light, glowed the same blue-green as Kyle's blood vessels. Okonkwo bent over the cultures, practically vibrating. This is extraordinary. The bioluminescence alone. But these structures, look here. He pointed to the crystalline formations Elena had noted. These are secondary metabolites, almost certainly bioactive. I'd need mass spec analysis to confirm, but the morphology suggests a novel class of compounds. Antibiotics? Elena asked. Possibly, but also immunomodulators, anti-inflammatories. This fungus could be a pharmacy unto itself. Okonkwo straightened. How quickly do you need results? Kyle, the patient, needs to return to their community as soon as they're stable. I'd say 48 hours maximum. I want to understand this fungus well enough to potentially cultivate it, to ensure they have access to their medicine if anything happens. 48 hours. Okonkwo laughed, but it wasn't dismissive. You're asking me to do months of work in 2 days. I'm asking you to prioritize toxicity profile, active compounds, cultivation requirements. Can we do that? We can try. He was already pulling on gloves, reaching for the cultures. But Dr. Voss, if this individual has been using this fungus symbiotically, introducing it to human populations could be catastrophic. We have no idea how it interacts with our immune systems, our microbiome. This isn't just about discovery, it's about safety. I know! Elena thought of Kale's glowing blood vessels. That's why this stays contained. We learn, we document, but we don't deploy. Not without decades of study. Agreed. Okonkwo began setting up equipment, moving with practiced efficiency. Now tell me everything about the patient's physiology. I need to understand the symbiosis. Eleanor spent the next 12 hours shuttling between the lab and Kale's room, serving as a conduit between the mycologist's questions and Kale's signed answers. It was exhausting, exhilarating work. Through gestures, drawings, and increasingly elaborate pantomime, Kale explained the fungus's use. It grew in old-growth cedar groves, in specific microclimates where moisture and shade balanced perfectly. Kale's people harvested it carefully, taking only mature fruiting bodies and leaving the mycelium undisturbed. They dried it, ground it with other plants, and stored it in cedar bark containers. Each family group had a medicine keeper, a role that required decades of training. Kyle was young for the role, they indicated through signs and gestures, perhaps 30 human years, though Eleanor had no real baseline for their species aging. They'd been apprenticed to an elder for 15 years, learning the locations of medicinal plants, the proper harvest times, the preparation methods. The elder had died 2 winters ago. Kyle's face showed clear grief at this, and now Kyle carried the knowledge alone. The burden of that isolation was visible. Kyle had no one to consult, no backup if they failed, and they'd nearly died from a stupid territorial fight, leaving their community without a medicine keeper. How many people in your group? Eleanor asked through signs and drawings. Kale held up both hands, fingers spread, then 3 more fingers, 13. A group of 13. Eleanor's heart sank. That was nowhere near a viable population. Even with perfect conditions, genetic diversity would collapse within generations. But Kyle signed something else, circling their hands, pointing to different directions, other groups. They sketched a rough map in Elena's notebook. Mountains, valleys, with dots representing communities. Elena counted. Maybe 6 groups, perhaps 80 to 100 individuals total. Not enough. Nowhere near enough, but alive, still alive, against impossible odds. Okonkwo's preliminary results arrived just after midnight. Elena read the report in stunned silence. The fungus, he'd designated it Specimen CE1, awaiting formal classification, produced at least 15 distinct bioactive compounds. 3 were novel beta-glucans with powerful immune-stimulating properties. 4 were peptide antibiotics effective against drug-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. 2 were anti-inflammatory triterpenes, more potent than synthetic corticosteroids, but without the side effects. The pharmaceutical potential was staggering, but the cultivation requirements were specific to the point of impossible. The fungus needed intact old-growth forest microbiomes, symbiotic relationships with specific cedar mycorrhizae, precise temperature and humidity ranges. Growing it in a lab would take years of research. Growing it commercially might never be feasible. "It's a forest medicine," Okonkwo had written in his notes. "This fungus co-evolved with a specific ecosystem and a specific people. Remove it from that context, and it fails. This isn't a resource we can extract. It's a relationship we can only observe." Elena showed the report to Kyle, pointing to the drawings of the fungus, the chemical structures, the notes on efficacy. She couldn't explain the details, but she could convey the importance, the value. Kyle read her expression, her excitement. They signed, "Good, useful." Elena nodded emphatically. This medicine could save countless lives, could revolutionize treatment for infections, inflammation, immune disorders. Kyle's next sign was one Elena had learned. Why? Why show this to her? Why share the knowledge? Elena struggled to answer. She drew human figures in a hospital, the sick, the dying. She drew the fungus helping, healing. She drew Kyle's people remaining hidden, safe, while their medicine reached those who needed it. A fantasy, a naive hope that she could somehow bridge this gap, honor both the secret and the need. Kyle studied the drawings. Then they drew something new, a circle with a slash through it. No, they pointed to themselves, to the mountains beyond the facility walls. They signed a sequence Elena had learned: home, family, safe. Then they pointed to the fungus drawings and signed, "Ours, not yours." The message was unmistakable. This medicine belonged to their people, in their context. Sharing it with humans would mean exposure, invasion, the end of their hidden world. "I understand," Elena said, throat tight. "I do. We won't take it, I promise." Kyle held her gaze, searching. Then they reached out and touched Elena's notebook, turning to the very first page. The drawing Kyle had made on that first day, the circle, the tree, the family. Kyle tapped it firmly. "This is what matters. Not the medicine, not the science, the community, the survival." Elena nodded, tears pricking her eyes. Okay, we'll get you home." But even as she said it, the ethical labyrinth closed in. She had knowledge that could save lives, human lives, thousands of them, but using that knowledge would doom Kale's people. The trolley problem writ large and impossible. Reeves found her in the observation room at 0300, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "No." Elena didn't look up. "We have a choice to make, and every option is wrong. Tell me." Elena laid out the findings, the pharmaceutical potential, Kyle's refusal, their right to say no. Going public with this would be genocide. But staying silent means people die, human people who could be saved. "They're dying anyway," Reeves said quietly. "This fungus isn't scalable. Even if Kyle's people shared willingly, we couldn't produce enough to matter, not in our lifetimes. You read Okonkwo's report. So we just, pretend we never found it? We document it, we preserve the knowledge, and we protect the forest where it grows." Reeves sat beside her. "That's the play, Dr. Voss. We classify this entire region as a federal wilderness preserve, off-limits to logging, development, recreation. We claim endangered species. Pick any bird or fish, doesn't matter. The point is to create a buffer zone. And Kale's people live in peace. Use their medicine. Survive if they can. Reeves's expression was weary. It's not a perfect solution. It's not even a good one. But it's the least harmful option in a sea of catastrophes. Elena wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the angle. Reeves was right. Sometimes the least bad choice was the only ethical one. What about the research? Elena asked. Okonkwo's findings, the genetic data, everything I've documented? Sealed archive. Accessible only to future researchers if, and this is a big if, Kyle's people or their descendants ever choose to share. Until then, it's a time capsule. A record that they existed, that they mattered. That's all we get, documentation. That's everything, Dr. Voss. Reeves stood. We get to bear witness, to say they were here, they were people, they had knowledge and culture, and the right to exist. In a world that destroys what it doesn't understand, that's not a small thing. Dawn came with mist, the mountains emerging from cloud like ancient thoughts, becoming solid. Eleanor entered Cale's room to find them standing by the window, one hand pressed to the glass. They were dressed in their own clothes now, leather leggings, a woven cedar bark tunic that Marcus had found with the original samples. The medical gown was folded neatly on the exam table. You're ready to go, Elena said softly. Kyle turned, nodding. They were still favoring the injured side, but the movement was fluid, strong. The antibiotics had done their job. Another day or two of rest would be ideal, but Elena understood the urgency. Every hour Cale stayed was an hour their community went without a medicine keeper. I have something for you. Elena held out a small cedar box Okonkwo had prepared. Inside were cultures of the fungus, dormant spores packed in sterile substrate. In case you need to replant, if anything happens to your groves. Kyle took the box carefully, examining the contents. They understood. This was a backup, a genetic library for a potentially endangered resource. Kyle set the box aside and reached for their neck, removing the beaded cord Eleanor had first noticed. They held it out to her. No, I can't. Eleanor stepped back. That's yours. That's important. Kyle insisted, pressing it into her hands. The wooden beads were smooth, worn by years of wear. The carvings showed trees, animals, human figures. A story preserved in wood. Kyle signed, Remember, remember us. Elena clutched the necklace, nodding through tears. Always. I promise. Kyle touched her shoulder. A gentle pressure, warm through her shirt. Then they picked up the cedar box and signed, Ready. Time to go. Marcus drove them into the mountains. Elena in the passenger seat, Kyle hidden in the covered truck bed. The road dwindled to a trail, then to nothing. They hiked the last 3 miles, climbing through old-growth forest into the high country where the air was thin and clean and the trees whispered secrets. Kyle led the way, moving with increasing confidence as the terrain became familiar. They stopped at a boundary marker, stone cairns arranged in patterns Elena was beginning to recognize. Kyle rearranged several stones, leaving a sign for their people. Then they turned to Elena and Marcus. The goodbye was simple. Kyle touched both of them on the shoulder, the gesture now clearly one of respect, of bonding. They signed, Thank you, friends. Be safe, Elena whispered. Please, be safe. Kyle nodded. Then they melted into the forest, moving so silently that within seconds they were invisible, just another shadow among the cedars. Elena stood there long after, staring at the spot where Kyle had disappeared. Marcus waited patiently, keeping watch. Will they make it? Elena asked finally. Will their people survive? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. But they've got a better chance now than they did a week ago. You gave them that. Elena touched the beaded necklace around her own neck now, feeling the carvings under her fingers. Remember us. We need to protect this place, she said. Everything Reeves said, the preserve, the restrictions, all of it. We need to make sure no one else comes up here. Already in motion, Reeves is fast when she wants to be. Marcus started back down the trail. Come on. We've got a lot of paperwork to file, all of it lying about endangered spotted owls and critical habitat. Elena followed, casting one last look at the high forest. Somewhere up there, Kyle was returning to their people, carrying medicine and knowledge and the hope of survival. The secret would hold. It had to. In her pack, Elena carried her notebooks, dozens of pages of observations, sketches, genetic data, and pharmaceutical analyses. A record of the impossible. Proof that humanity was not alone, had never been alone. That kinship ran deeper than species, and that wisdom could flourish in the wild places humans had forgotten. She would file it all away, seal it in Reeves's classified archives, and she would keep the memory alive, the promise made to a medicine keeper in a federal bunker, witnessed only by stone and cedar and the ancient watching mountains. Some discoveries were too precious to share. Some truths were too dangerous to speak. And some people, human or otherwise, deserved the right to remain hidden, to live and die on their own terms, unknown and unmolested by a world that would never understand. Elena walked down the mountain, bearing witness to a secret she would carry forever. The burden felt right, holy, almost. Behind her, the forest kept its silence, and in that silence, a people survived. 3 months later, Eleanor stood in the Timber Creek facility's server room, watching as Reeves entered the final access codes. The screen blinked. Archive sealed. Project CE1, classified Level 5. Review date 2074. 50 years, 2 generations. That's how long the secret would stay buried. It's done, Reeves said quietly. Everything you documented, Okonkwo's findings, the genetic analyses, it's all in the vault now, future-proofed, backed up in 3 separate locations. If something happens to Kale's people, at least there will be a record. A tombstone, Elena said bitterly. That's what we're creating. A very expensive tombstone. Maybe, or maybe it's a seed bank. Reeves shut down the terminal. We don't know what the world looks like in 50 years. Maybe by then we've learned to coexist with the unknown. Maybe Kyle's people will be ready to step out of the shadows. Or maybe this stays sealed for another century. The point is, the knowledge survives. Elena touched the beaded necklace. She wore it constantly now, hidden under her shirt. Have there been any signs? Sightings? Nothing confirmed. A few hikers reported strange sounds in the Cascade Peak area, but that's par for the course. Elk can sound pretty weird during rut season. Reeves paused. The wilderness designation went through. 47,000 acres, including Kale's territory and the surrounding buffer zones. No logging, no development, limited recreational access. It's as safe as we can make it. It's not enough. No, it never is. Reeves gathered her files. You heading back to the university? Eventually. I took a sabbatical. Told them I was writing a book on Pacific Northwest ethnobotany. Eleanor laughed without humor. The lie detector that one is. I am writing it, just leaving out the most important parts. That book could still save lives, Dr. Voss. The plants Kale showed you, the ones that aren't classified, that's valuable knowledge. Traditional medicines that work. Consolation prizes, Elena muttered. But Reeves was right. She'd spent the last 3 months researching every plant Kale had identified, cross-referencing with Lummi traditional knowledge, carefully with permission from Marcus's elder friend, and documenting the uses, preparations, and efficacy. It was good work, important work, just not the work her soul cried out to do. She couldn't write about the fungus. Couldn't publish Kale's genetic profile, the evidence of a sister species surviving against all odds, the most significant discovery of her career, and it had to stay silent. When does the grief get easier? Elena asked. Reeves looked at her with unexpected sympathy. It doesn't. You just get used to carrying it. Elena returned to her cabin on the edge of the preserve, a small A-frame she'd rented indefinitely. It was too close and too far all at once. Close enough to feel like she was keeping watch, far enough that she'd never accidentally intrude on Kyle's territory. Marcus visited weekly, bringing supplies and news. He'd become an unofficial liaison, the only other person besides Eleanor who'd actually met Kyle. They'd formed a quiet bond, two people bearing an impossible secret. "Elder Crow asked about you," Marcus said, unpacking groceries. "She wants to know if you'll come to the winter gathering. No pressure, but she thinks you're carrying something heavy. Says it shows in your walk." She's not wrong. Elena made coffee, the familiar ritual grounding. "What do I say?" "Hi, I met your people's ancient neighbors, but I can't tell you anything about it." "You don't have to say anything. Just sit, listen, be present." Marcus accepted the mug. "The Lummi have been keeping secrets for centuries, Elena. They understand the weight. They also understand that some knowledge is held in community, not in isolation. You can't tell them specifics, I know. But you can let them know you're holding something sacred. You'd be surprised how much that helps." Eleanor considered. The loneliness had been crushing, the knowledge a wall between her and everyone else. Even talking to Marcus was difficult. He understood the situation, but he hadn't touched Cale's hand, hadn't seen the intelligence and fear and trust in those amber eyes. "Maybe," she said, "let me think about it." Marcus nodded, not pushing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the rain streak the windows. November in the Cascades was a study in grey sky, grey rain, grey stone showing through the thinning forest, beautiful in its austerity. "Have you been up to the boundary, Marcus?" Elena asked. "Weekly patrols. Everything's quiet. I rearranged one of the cairns yesterday, left it in the all-clear pattern Elder Crow taught me. This morning someone had added a stone on top, a perfect white quartz shaped like an eye." Elena's breath caught. "They're watching. Always have been. We're just invited into the conversation now." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of the cairn with its quartz topper. "I think this is their way of saying, we see you, we remember you. It's reciprocal acknowledgement." "They're okay," Elena whispered. Cale made it back. "They're alive. Seems like." Marcus pocketed the phone. "Which means your work mattered, Dr. Voss. You saved a life, maybe saved a people, giving them their medicine keeper back." Eleanor wanted to believe it, but the arithmetic of extinction haunted her. 13 individuals in Kyle's group, maybe 100 total across all communities. Those numbers didn't recover. One bad winter, one disease outbreak, one aggressive logging operation on adjacent land. Any of those could tip them over the edge. "I should have done more," she said. "Found a way to help without exposing them." "You did exactly what Cale asked you to do. You healed them and let them go home. That's not nothing." "It's not enough. It never is," Marcus echoed Reeves's words. "But it's what we've got." The winter gathering was held in a longhouse on Lummi Nation land, a beautiful cedar structure with carved posts telling stories of creation, transformation, and survival. Elena came reluctantly, feeling like an intruder despite Marcus's invitation and Elder Crow's welcome. The elder was a small woman in her 80s, with silver hair in long braids and eyes that missed nothing. She greeted Elena at the entrance, taking both her hands. "You have the look," she said without preamble. "The 1,000-yard stare we old-timers know. You've seen something that changed you." Elena could only nod. "Good. The world needs more people who've been changed." Elder Crow led her inside, where perhaps 50 people were gathering, families, elders, young people, all moving with the comfortable familiarity of community. "Tonight, we tell the old stories, the ones that remind us who we are. You're welcome to listen. Sometimes that's healing in itself." The ceremony began with drumming, the heartbeat rhythm reverberating through the longhouse. Then came the stories, tales of Raven bringing light to the world, of salmon teaching generosity, of the land itself being alive with intelligence and memory. When Elder Crow spoke, her voice carried the weight of generations. She told of the shy people, the forest kin who walked upright but chose silence over speech, solitude over the crowded salmon streams. She spoke of the last trade, 150 years past, when a medicine woman of the shy people exchanged knowledge of healing plants for obsidian and dried fish. "My great-great-grandmother was there," Elder Crow said. She said the shy woman had hands like ours, but bigger, stronger, eyes that saw in the darkness, and a kindness in her face, a gentleness, despite her size and strangeness. They sat together for 3 days, drawing pictures in the sand, showing each other plants. Both medicine women, both keepers of knowledge, different peoples, but the same heart. Elena felt tears rolling down her face. The story was history, and it was prophecy. It was what had happened between her and Kyle, centuries apart but echoing across time. The shy people chose to leave, Elder Crow continued, not because they were defeated, but because they saw what was coming. The machines, the noise, the cutting of ancient trees. They decided invisibility was survival. And we who stayed, we decided to honor that choice, to keep the secret, to let them be. She looked directly at Elena. Some secrets are kept for protection. Some knowledge is held sacred not because it's powerful, but because sharing it would destroy what we're trying to protect. That's the work of guardians, to remember without revealing, to honor without exposing. The gathering murmured agreement. Elena realized with a shock that many of them knew, not the specifics, not Kale's name or the fungus's properties, but the shape of the secret, the existence of their forest kin. It was a communal burden, held across generations, and now she was part of that lineage. After the ceremony, Elder Crow pulled Elena aside. They walked along the beach, rain misting their faces, the sound of waves rhythmic and eternal. "You met one of them," the elder said. Not a question. Elena hesitated, then nodded. "I helped them. Then I let them go." "Good. That's the right order. Help, then release. Too many people want to hold on to what they discover, make it theirs. You understood that they belong to themselves." Elder Crow picked up a smooth stone, turning it in her weathered hands. "Did they give you anything, a token?" Eleanor touched the necklace under her shirt. "Keep it safe. That's a trust object, a memory carrier. They're asking you to remember, to bear witness. That's a sacred responsibility." "How do I do it?" Eleanor asked, voice breaking. "How do I carry this without destroying myself? Every day I wake up knowing what I know, and I can't tell anyone, can't use it to help people." "You are helping people, just not in the way you thought you would." Elder Crow handed her the stone. "My grandmother taught me some medicine is made to share, some medicine is made to protect. The shy people's medicine, that fungus you found, that's protection medicine. It keeps them alive. If you share it, you destroy them. So you hold it, you honor it, and you find other ways to heal. What if they go extinct? What if I'm the last person to see them and I just let it happen? Then you mourn. You tell their story to the people who can be trusted. You make sure they're remembered with dignity." Elder Crow's eyes were fierce. "But you don't give up on them yet. They've survived ice ages, eruptions, diseases that wiped out whole civilizations. They're survivors. Have faith in that." Elena clutched the stone, a physical anchor. "How do you live with it, the not knowing?" "I live with it the way I live with the tide. I accept that some things are bigger than me, older than me, and will go on whether I understand them or not. The shy people don't need me to save them. They need me to respect them. There's a difference." Christmas came and went. Elena spent it alone in the cabin, working on her ethnobotany manuscript. She wrote about Devil's Club, about Cascara and Yarrow, about the traditional knowledge systems of the Pacific Northwest tribes. It was good work, careful work, giving credit to the indigenous communities who'd preserved this knowledge through colonization and suppression. But every page felt incomplete without Kale's contributions, without the fungal pharmacopoeia that could revolutionize medicine. The ghost text, the invisible footnotes, haunted every paragraph. On New Year's Eve, Marcus hiked up with a bottle of whiskey and 2 mugs. They sat on the porch, watching snow fall in the darkness. "I got word from Reeves," Marcus said. "There's been another sighting, a different area, about 30 miles north. Hikers reported seeing a large, upright figure moving through the trees. No photos, thank God, but it's generating buzz online." Elena's stomach clenched. "Do we need to—" "Already handled. Forest Service is pushing the bear standing on hind legs explanation. posting photos of black bears in similar postures. It'll blow over. Marcus poured whiskey. But it's a reminder. They're still out there, still moving through their territories. Still at risk, Elena said. Always. Marcus clinked his mug against hers. To small victories and impossible secrets. To survival, Elena amended. Theirs and ours. They drank, the whiskey burning warm against the cold. In the forest, something moved, probably a deer, maybe an owl. Elena let herself imagine it was something else, someone else watching over the boundary with the same vigilance she kept. I'm going to stay, she said suddenly. Here, in this cabin. I'll take a position with the Forest Service if they'll have me. I need to be close, to watch over them. Marcus didn't look surprised. Elder Crow predicted that. She said you'd become a guardian whether you chose it or not. Is that what I am? A guardian? You're a witness, a keeper, a friend maybe, to people who have very few. Marcus refilled their mugs. It's not a small thing, Elena. Don't undervalue it. It feels like the least I can do. It's everything they need from you, presence without interference, awareness without exploitation. That's the rarest gift you can give. And Lena stared into the darkness, thinking of Kale, somewhere out there in the snow, tending to their community, teaching apprentices, keeping the old knowledge alive. She thought of the fungus growing in hidden groves, the bioluminescent glow in the dark, the medicine that would never reach beyond its intended people. Do you think they're happy? She asked. I think they're surviving, which is its own kind of happiness, Marcus said. They're free. They're hidden. They're living on their own terms. That's more than most beings get in this world. Spring arrived with a rush of meltwater and new growth. Elena settled into her role as a Forest Service consulting biologist, ostensibly monitoring endangered species habitats. In reality, she was a sentry watching for threats to Kale's people. She hiked the boundary territories weekly, checking the stone cairns, looking for signs. Sometimes she found them. A rearranged stone, a branch broken in a specific pattern that Marcus had taught her meant all is well. Once, she found a small bundle of dried fungus left on a flat rock, wrapped in cedar bark. A gift, a thank you, a reminder. She stored it carefully, documenting but not using, honoring the gift's spirit while respecting its source. Her manuscript was accepted for publication. A comprehensive guide to Pacific Northwest medicinal plants, with extensive citations of indigenous knowledge and a strong emphasis on conservation ethics. It wasn't the paper that would have made her career, but it was honest work, good work. Okonkwo sent her a message. Heard your book is coming out. Proud of you. The other project lives in my memory too. I think about it often, what we found, what we chose not to take. That restraint, that ethics, that's the real discovery. We learned something important about ourselves. Elena wrote back, we learned that some things are more valuable protected than published. That's not a lesson they teach in grad school. They should, Okonkwo replied. God knows they should. In May, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Agent Reeves appeared at the cabin door, looking older and more tired than Elena remembered. I'm leaving the agency, Reeves said without preamble. Retiring. Wanted to check on the project before I go. It's still secret, Elena said, still safe. That's not what I meant. Reeves accepted the offered coffee, settling into a porch chair. I meant you. Are you okay? Really okay? Elena considered lying, then shrugged. I'm managing. Some days are harder than others. I keep thinking about publication, about the medical applications. Then I think about Kale, and I know I'd make the same choice again. Good. That's maturity. Reeves watched the forest. I've spent 30 years managing impossible secrets. This is the one I'm proudest of. We did it right. We protected them without exploiting them. That's rare. Will the next person in your role feel the same way? I've briefed my replacement personally, showed them the files, told them the stakes. They get it. Reeves paused. But I'll be honest. You're the real guardian now, Dr. Voss. You and Marcus and Elder Crow. The federal government is just backup. If something happens, if there's a threat, you're the first line of defense. That's terrifying. Yes, it is. Reeves stood. But I trust you. You've already made the hard choices, put their welfare above your career. That's the test, and you passed. What if I fail? What if I miss something and they get exposed? Then you'll deal with it, same as you dealt with Cale's injury, with compassion, competence, and creativity. Reeves offered her hand. It's been an honor working with you, Doctor. Voss, keep the faith. They shook, and then Reeves was gone, driving away down the mountain road. Elena watched until the dust settled, feeling the weight of responsibility settling deeper into her bones. She was alone with the secret now. The last active guardian, except for Marcus and the elders. It should have felt crushing. Instead, it felt right. Summer brought tourists to the lower elevations, and with them, increased vigilance. Elena worked closely with rangers to monitor the preserve's boundaries, making sure hikers stayed on approved trails, that no one ventured into the protected core areas. There was one close call in July, a group of extreme hikers who bypassed trail closures, pushing deep into the old-growth cedar groves. Elena and Marcus intercepted them before they reached the sensitive zones, citing endangered species protections and issuing stern warnings. The hikers grumbled but complied. Elena watched them descend, heart pounding. How close had they come to Cale's territory? Had they seen anything? Left scent trails that would disturb the shy people's movements? She hiked into the boundary zone that night, checking the cairns. Everything was normal, but she left a specific pattern anyway, the warning sign Marcus had taught her, meaning humans nearby, be cautious. The next morning the cairn had been modified. A single stone added to the top, painted with a quick smear of red ochre. Message received, they understood. Elena breathed easier. Autumn arrived, the anniversary of Cale's rescue approaching. Elena marked it privately, hiking to the spot where they'd first brought Kyle down from the mountains. The area looked undisturbed, the forest reclaiming any trace of that day's drama. She sat on a fallen log, pulling out her journal. She'd kept one the whole year. Not scientific notes, but personal reflections, trying to process the experience, the ethics, the grief, and the privilege of bearing witness. 1 year, she wrote. 1 year since I met you, Kyle. 1 year since my whole understanding of the world expanded to include your people. I hope you're well. I hope your community is thriving. I hope the fungus groves are healthy, that the winter was mild, that no threats found you. I think about the medicine sometimes, the lives it could save if we could share it. But then I think about your drawing, the circle, the tree, the family. I remember what matters most, and I choose you. Every time, I choose you. Elder Crow says that's the work of guardianship, to hold knowledge without using it, to witness without interfering. Some days it feels like I'm doing nothing. Other days it feels like I'm doing the most important work of my life. I don't know if you think about me, if you remember the strange human woman who stitched your wound and learned your signs. Maybe I'm just a footnote in your story, a brief moment of danger and recovery, but you're everything in mine. You changed me, Kyle. Made me understand that some things are more precious than knowledge, more important than discovery. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for surviving. I'll keep watching. I'll keep the secret. I promise. He closed the journal, tucking it away. In the distance, a raven called, harsh, laughing, alive. Elena smiled. The world was still full of mysteries, still wild in the places humans hadn't quite reached. And in those wild places, people lived. Different people, hidden people, but people nonetheless. Surviving against the odds, keeping their knowledge alive, walking the ancient paths their ancestors had walked for millennia. Elena stood, shouldering her pack. She had work to do, samples to collect, data to record, reports to file. The mundane work of forest management that disguised the real mission, guardianship, witness, memory keeper. It was enough. It had to be enough. She touched the beaded necklace, feeling the carved patterns under her fingers. Remember us. Always, she whispered to the forest. I promise. Always. And somewhere in the deep woods, where the cedars grew tall and the fungus glowed in the dark, Kale tended to their people, teaching the next generation, keeping the old ways alive, surviving. The secret held, and in holding it saved them all. If this story moved you, consider subscribing to our channel for more speculative fiction that bridges science and wonder, ethics and survival. We explore the hidden corners of our world where mystery still thrives, and ask the hardest questions about our responsibility to protect what we discover. Join our community of thoughtful readers who believe some truths are worth keeping sacred. Like, share, and let us know in the comments, what would you have done in Dr. Voss's position? When does the duty to preserve outweigh the duty to share? Remember, the wild places are still out there, and they're worth protecting.